Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Truth Wanted. I'm your host, ObjectivelyDan, but this is not a normal episode of Truth Wanted. This is the Golden Picos. That's right, folks. We named an award show after my cat. This year was a crazy year. We had some fun calls, some awesome guests, and we thought it'd be cool to share some of the highlights with you guys this year. So what we decided to do was pick some of our favorites and let you guys vote on it. And so now we have the results of those votes, and that's what we're here to do tonight. As you can see, those of you who are watching the video format of this, I'm dressed for the occasion here, and we got a lot of people here to present some of these awards. Some of them you may have recognized from other ACA productions. Some of them work behind the scenes that you don't get to see too often. So I'm really looking forward to see what you guys' picks were for this year's Golden Pico Awards. All right, so for our first category, we thought we'd start with the most out there theory of the year. This is Truth Wanted, folks. I mean, we get a lot of calls that are kind of out there. So I suspect that this is a pretty competitive category. To present this category is somebody with a lot of experience with out there theories, let's say. If you've ever posted a naughty word on the group chat or on the live chat, you may have encountered this name. It's our volunteer coordinator, Tangel Wright. Tangel, take it away.
The truth is out there somewhere. Unfortunately, none of the callers in this category are going to be the ones who provide us with it. The nominees in this category of favorite out there theories are Daniel with alien abductions.
But another, I think, potential explanation is that what's happening is what they're saying is happening, that they are being abducted by aliens for whatever reason. I don't know. And the reason we don't know the reason it remains a mystery why it can't be proven is because the technology that these aliens have, they're so advanced that it looks like magic to us.
Dylan with 9/11 conspiracies.
There's more evidence that 9/11 was a conspiracy?
That there is okay, so I wouldn't say the event was a conspiracy because the event was an event.
Okay.
Was there a conspiracy involved? Yes. Were they involved in a cover-up? Yes. Did the tower have explosives planted in it before by the CIA or anybody? No.
Ransom with aliens in painting.
There is some evidence for ancient advanced civilizations, and you think you can explain that evidence. Is that right?
Yep. I'm on, bro.
Okay. Well, here's your chance.
And the winner is Dylan with 9/11 conspiracies.
It looks like a demolition, all of that stuff.
Can you give me like a chronology of events? Like what was the
chronology of events?
Yeah.
The building was built in the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
It was built by a not great contractor.
Okay.
There is evidence that and now this has not been proven in a court, but there is some evidence that the same company, the same contractors that built the Twin Towers had also built other buildings in 9/11, that they basically only got those gigs because of kickbacks.
Okay.
And they didn't do as good of a job as they possibly could have.
Okay. Are we getting too broad here? Can we narrow the scope of this to just the events of the actual day? That's kind of what I meant by the chronology.
Yeah, okay.
Let's go from there.
Events of the day, some dudes hijack some planes.
Okay.
Drive the planes into a building.
Okay.
The jet fuel combusts and heats up.
But did it
very,
melt the
very
steel?
hot.
Sorry.
Shh. Quiet you. Anyway.
No. And if you study materials engineering or just basic material science,
I'm so sorry.
you'll see you don't need you don't have to melt a piece of steel to make it flexible. And
I'm so
Eric,
sorry.
I think I remember you.
No, I led this call way off topic. I'm so sorry. Please, Dylan, continue with the chronology because I just need to shut up.
that's basically my point. A lot of people, a lot of the conspiracy theorists will say steel won't melt at whatever the temperature was. I think it was, I don't have my notes on me actually. I just moved as well. That was really funny that the last caller had said that. Anyway, steel does not need to melt to bend. And anyone who's ever worked with a forge or around, metal masters, if you see somebody pull out metal from a furnace, it's not melting. It's still a solid shape, but you can form it.
Okay. So,
right. So
steel beams, they can bend.
So here,
maybe outside of jet fuel. We have established this. I don't reject that outright. I don't know enough about it to be honest with you. But okay, so they can bend. So what? Right? Like, I just want to try to cut to the chase here just a little bit, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So cut to the chase. Basically, the conspiracy was a cover-up of corrupt building practices and insufficient standards of safety.
So that's okay. That's an explanation for why it happened, right? I want to know what happened. What in your mind was the events that occurred? Was it a bomb that was placed in the building? Was it
no bomb?
No bomb.
Planes
so
were enough.
So
and
this seems unremarkable.
So it is completely unremarkable, but there is still a conspiracy involved.
Okay.
By the New York Building Association, and
Are you saying the pillar of virtue that is the New York Building Association? The above reproach? Sorry, go on.
Yes. No, that is what I'm saying. It's really not, it's nothing special. It's nothing amazing. It was just greedy people being terrible.
And
the building itself had failed fire inspections for like a decade beforehand. Starting in 1994, you can actually see the pictures of the fireproofing material that's falling off of all of the structural beams.
Okay. So what you're saying is the reason why the tower fell down was because the structural integrity of the building was not good. Like, it did not pass certain inspections, and therefore when the planes hit, the building crashed and fell.
Okay.
Is that what you're getting at?
Basically.
Okay.
It's like building a building out of cardboard and being surprised it falls down when it rains.
Why didn't the building just fall because a plane hit it?
Well, that's what he's
right. But just hypothetically, right? I'm not necessarily disputing any kind of charges of a malpractice in building inspection. Well, I'm more interested in, okay, why can't we just take what it is at face value? And that, a plane hit a building. Is the implication here that if the building was up to standards of code, that it wouldn't have fallen down if a plane hit it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay. See, that's a bit different from when we talk about 9/11 conspiracy theories. Because even on this show, we've talked about before.
Well, so here's the thing, man.
Yes.
It's unremarkable to the point of, when you were saying they, I was like, oh, who's they? I need to know who they is. Is it the Illuminati? Is it the lizard people? Is it the Bilderberg group? But it okay.
All right. For our second category of the night, we have our favorite caller. Now, I want to say that every single person that calls into the show is my favorite caller, but that's simply not true. And somebody that can vouch for that as well is our call screener, Katie Stewart. And Katie Stewart is our next presenter for the night. So, Katie, please take it away.
As a primary call screener for Truth Wanted, I've taken a lot of calls for the show. Some of them turned out to be lousy. Many of them were good, but a few of them were great, memorable calls. The nominees in the category of favorite callers are Bridget, the former ghost hunter.
Talk to us about.
Well, I thought, I was going to call in last week, and I really should have. I was a ghost hunter for several years. And I don't know. I felt like you had questions about ghosts, and I'm not sure which stories you want to hear.
Okay, wait a minute. You're retiring on the line just to get
Ian with Alan Watts.
Yeah, Ian, what's up? How's it going?
So today the topic I've got is out there. Kind of crazy.
I love out there. Let's do it. I'm into it already.
Okay.
You had me on out there. That's it.
Yep. Steph with gender abolitionism.
My first beer, so the night is young.
Yeah, there you go. How can we help you today,
All right.
Steph?
Well, I was wondering if either of you had formulated an opinion on gender abolitionism, or if you even knew what that was.
Yeah. So Neil and I were talking because we saw you come up.
And the winner is Bridget, the former ghost hunter.
And I'm not sure which stories you want to hear.
Okay, wait a minute. You're a retired ghost hunter. Is your retirement due to still a ghost hunter? Maybe.
No, I'm no longer a ghost hunter because I realized that, none of it is real.
Okay, so that was going to be my first question. What was the reason for commission, right? So we got that out of the way. How did you figure that out?
Well, I always called myself a skeptic. Always was the one standing behind, watching people hear things and hear voices and, oh my God, did you hear that? Did you hear that? And I was the one standing there saying, yeah, the wind blew, or, I was the one finding the explanations for things. But it actually took me being uninvited to an exorcism before I really, really realized that it was all just made up. The belief comes first. All these people believed it first. And then everything that they couldn't explain, it was a ghost.
Yeah, I think that's true for my experience too. Now, granted, I've never been involved in the ghost hunter community. But the people who I've talked to, that's not true. I used to have a coworker that was part of a paranormal investigation group, and she was a fascinating woman. But that's a story for another time.
That's exactly what I did.
Okay.
Exactly
So
the same thing that I did. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's so curious to me because you believed it enough to be a part of an organization. Like, how did you get to that point? Was it just the desire to know the truth? Was it just
kind of?
Okay? Like, tell us about that.
Well, I think I grew up I was raised Catholic, but Catholic light. So I didn't really go to church. I believed in a God. My mom kind of taught me spiritual stuff, I suppose, astrology and that type of thing. And I just decided, I don't know, I saw this thing on Facebook or something, and, you can apply. So I applied to join this group out of curiosity. Went through 3 months of training, crazy, 2-3 nights a week, hours long things. And I was really good at it. So I stuck around for a really long time. I always had questions. But when I started asking the wrong questions and questioning the wrong people, I was almost shunned, I would say.
Yeah. I see. I can see that. I could see that. Hey, this isn't the kind of stuff that we are investigating here, right? We're not investigating whether ghosts are real or not. We're just trying to figure out which ghosts are here, right? I could see that.
It was more of somebody was going to be having exorcism, quote unquote exorcism, but the reasons for it had really personal. The director of the group had some personal issues with this person and was just trying to make them look bad. Bottom line, and I was asking the questions. And so it really got into a lot of stuff. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. But I can say that I experienced some things that I couldn't explain during that time. But I know now that doesn't mean there's not an explanation.
But the real ghosts were the friends we made along the way.
And boy, isn't that true? Like when I left religion, I found out how many of my friends were only friends because we happened to go to the same church and share the same activities. And this makes me really curious because so you were always a skeptic, like both going into it and while you were doing it. Did I understand that correctly?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
See,
yeah,
this
pretty
would be
much. Although I'm more of a skeptic now, for sure. But go ahead.
this is where it's fascinating for me because as I was saying early on in the show, I want to actually examine these supernatural claims. Let's bring it. You know, it's like you say you can control how plants grow. Let's experiment on it. If you can control, have you ever seen that experiment where they have this really light piece of tinfoil on a toothpick and they can get it to turn? Let's test that. Let's actually figure out what's going on. And being part of this community seems like for us skeptics, this is awesome. We actually get to find people who make these claims and then test them out. But no, because they aren't looking for skeptics, they aren't looking for people to experiment on the claims. They're looking for people to believe and spread the claims. And that's such a tough place to be.
Yes.
It's kind of heartbreaking for people like you and me, right, Bridget? When we go in there and we're just expected to believe and they're not helping us learn. They just want us to already absorb it and spread it. Yeah, it's very sad.
Alrighty, and now it's time to get to our third category of the night. Now, I've been hosting Truth Wanted for a while, and I hear a lot of unsubstantiated claims, some of which are so unsubstantiated, we actually created an entire category for the most unsubstantiated claims we've heard this year. And somebody who's also heard some of these unsubstantiated claims are our fellow call screener, Kurt. Kurt, please take it away.
Hitchens Razor states, that which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. Too often, people will call into Truth Wanted with claims that they are unable to logically back up. Before we dismiss their claims, let's look at some of our favorite evidenceless claims from throughout the year. The nominees in the category of biggest unsubstantiated claim are David with COVID is a hoax.
Yeah, for sure. So you have an interesting thing I think you want to talk about, the HCID classification when it comes to COVID-19. So tell me about that.
Yeah. Are you familiar at all with that or no?
To be honest, I'm not 100%. If you ask me what that acronym is, I couldn't tell you. So you'd have to.
Glenn, with animals are better off living a short life than none at all.
Okay. All right. Suppose there's aliens that are better at acquiring food and they want to eat humans. Would you rather live 10 years and then be the alien's food, or would you not like to live at all? Would you rather just have not existed?
I would probably rather not exist, but again,
Trina, with I can feel the pain of others.
Yeah. So what's going on? What do you got for us?
Well, I'm not sure if I can call it an ability or if you'd like to call it a gift. There's many names people like to give it, but I can actually use my hands and feel somebody's physical pain without physically touching them.
Feel somebody's physical pain.
And the winner is David with COVID is a hoax.
And his new projection is now up to, like, the highest would be 20,000.
What do you think that means?
You can look at.
Do you think that means there's a conspiracy going on, or do you think that's just a revision of projections after new data's come out?
Well, listen, man. People aren't working. Nobody's working. Huck, somebody in your comments just said I just looked it up. He did not retract his projection down. I didn't say he retracted his original projection, by the way. I said he revised it. So, people are putting words into my mouth.
Okay, well, David,
with that said, though.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, with that said, I called a number of police stations in New Jersey today. And, I did a live stream on my channel. And, I asked the police, I said, according to the First Amendment in the United States, we have freedom of assembly, right? And yet they're saying that they are busting people who are having parties for up, 50 people or 10 people, right? As not, not allowing to have people have these, people assemble.
Sure.
So I asked the police that, and they said they were following the orders, and I said, does this violate the Constitution, the First Amendment? And it was interesting, the responses I got. They kind of got into like a groan, because, they're caught. The First Amendment is very clear. We have freedom of right of assembly. And unless they have suspended the Constitution, then that First Amendment does not cease to exist.
Well, so, it's not federal agents that are really stopping us from, going out and hanging out in parties. A lot of this is happening on the state and local level. There's no federal decree out there.
State and local government cannot trump federal. State and local government cannot trump the federal Constitution.
Actually,
correct?
There are state laws that do, like, I mean, it's the separation of federal and state powers. I mean, if you're like marijuana, for example, is illegal federally. However, you can go to Colorado and go into a shop and just buy it. Like, there are these separations that do and can happen.
Well, I don't know. I think it's been argued in courts that the Constitution, the United States Constitution, trumps state laws. Like, you cannot make a state law that this is from what I read. Maybe I misread it. I'm fine. I've been wrong plenty of times before. I find it peculiar that they are, for something that now has been revised down to 20,000 deaths from this Neil Ferguson character. I don't know anybody who is sick or died from this. I know a lot of people, and none of those people know anybody who has died from this, and yet people are being bankrupted. The middle class is being carved out for something that there's no evidence that anything's taking place here.
Whoa, wait, you're saying there's no evidence that people are infected with the virus?
I'm saying there's no evidence that the consequences of what they are saying, the consequences that they're implying that are taking place, meaning thousands or really hundreds of thousands of people could potentially die from that. I don't believe there is any evidence. What makes you believe that there is evidence?
Well, hold on, wait. But that didn't quite answer my question. I'm wondering, do you believe there is a disease like infecting people?
There may or may not be. I do not know.
Okay, so what? So
do you? Do you
yeah,
know?
Absolutely.
Do you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? Okay,
yeah.
What is your evidence? What is your evidence?
There are people that I know who have told me that they have families and loved ones who have COVID. And I don't know why my friends and family would tell me that people have COVID if they're lying to me.
You didn't hear that they say that there's an 80% false positive response rate on the tests, supposedly?
Well, how can there be a false positive for a virus that doesn't exist?
Well, I said it may or may not exist. Didn't I say that? Or are you going to put those words into my mouth?
But you asked me if I believe
I want you to answer that.
David,
did I say that it didn't exist?
David, don't make me mute you, dude. You asked me if I believe that the virus is a thing, and I answered your question. Yes, the virus is a thing. I totally believe it. So that was in response to your question. Okay. So and you made the counterpoint of, well, don't you know that there's an 80%, false positive? It's like, well, that doesn't make sense. There can't be a false positive if there's no positive. Like, the virus has to exist. So that doesn't really, challenge.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't trust the news. I agree with that. But anyhow, you stating that it exists because you know people who have been sickened by it / I don't know, maybe even people who have died from it. If that is proof to you, that's kind of weak proof, because how do you know that the person just didn't die from an underlying disease that they previously had?
Because they have tests for it. That's why they do the blood work. We can test whether somebody has pneumonia or the flu.
Have you verified the test? Have you verified it yourself?
Why do I have to verify the tests to know that the tests are true?
The reason why is let's loop back to the UK government reclassifying
David, why the living hell does my opinion on the tests matter? I have no expertise in the subject. How could I possibly verify?
Does the UK government's reclassification as no longer considering COVID-19 to be a high consequence infection? Why are you talking over me when I speak?
David, I'm talking over you because this is my show. So you can stop talking over me maybe, and we can have a conversation. But I can just drop you at any time. This is all up to you and how you behave. Alrighty, folks. Now it's time to go on to our fourth category of the night. The ACA has a lot of productions going on, and we also have a lot of different hosts that do a lot of different shows. And some of those hosts have made appearances on this show in one way or another, particularly through calling into the show. So this next category is a fun one to say. It's our favorite ACA/YouTube host caller. And here's Martin to give those results.
Some episodes of Truth Wanted involve favorite topics of other ACA show hosts, and they feel compelled to call in and join the conversation. The nominees in the category of the favorite ACA show host caller are Johnny Angel.
I was just told not to ask if you can hear me, but I'm asking you anyway because I guess you didn't hear me before. Thanks for having me on,
that's
man.
right.
And
You get the one exception to that rule. So because we were having some issues, but thanks.
Neil, the 604 atheist.
They're up on the ceiling, and Neil, you're calling into the show. What's going on, man?
Yeah. And hello, Jim. Hey. Actually, I was calling in because I was in the chat earlier, doing my moderating stuff, and I said Jim should come on my show and share his deconversion story, and someone said I should call in and look for the truth in that.
Shannon Q.
Shannon Q. calling in to Truth Wanted. Shannon, what's going on?
Hi, how you doing? I'm good. I love you
good?
both. I'm calling in to fangirl about Autumn because I love her so much. You're all right too, Dan. You're okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
I'll take it. And the winner is Shannon Q.
Generally give you. You're right.
Yeah.
So I have a couple options for you, essentially. So several things came up during the show. I've been listening start to finish that I thought were interesting, and I wanted to talk to you guys more about because I'm incredibly selfish and I want to have dialogues with you guys about these things. So they're interesting. So the first was the idea of the angry atheist, because I think that that's very interesting. And the second was the idea surrounding Jesus mythicism, because I think that that's an interesting concept. So I guess I'll let you guys pick which question.
Shannon, I think
spin the wheel.
I think the angry atheist thing is right up your alley. I think that's something you can speak to. So let's go with that.
Okay, I'm absolutely open to that because I think it's a really interesting concept to delve into. So I said in the live chat earlier, for anybody who's watching from the start, that it's been in the live chat or is watching later, that I went through a phase that I wasn't necessarily angry, although I think some of my behaviors maybe manifested as angry, because I was frustrated with myself because I felt foolish. I felt as though I was an idiot. I had been fooled. I had been duped by something, and how could it be that I was so trivially foolish as to not investigate something that was so paramount to so many portions of my perspective on how I view the world and interact with people, as to just assume it. So I went through a phase where I behaviorally was, in retrospect, attempting to prove to myself that I wasn't a moron, that I was in fact smart. And that came off as kind of caustic. So I'm wondering if that resonates with either of you, or because I didn't hear Autumn necessarily talk about that. And I know how brilliant Autumn is. So I was wondering if you might have some input.
Yeah, Autumn, you go first because I've been talking a lot.
Gosh, my story's so weird because I just wanted to feel happy at the point that I recognized my atheism, that I just didn't want to feel bad feelings. I've had moments where I felt angry, and I guess it more has been at the people who indoctrinated me, because I feel like this was not an angry atheist phase. These are like angry atheist moments, right? Excuse me, I'm having that demon voice thing again. But basically, I was more upset with the people who indoctrinated me, because I'm like, you should have known, and you should have maybe not been so strict in your structure of how you ran things in the house and how you talked about these things. There should have been more open-minded. I guess yeah, I guess I've been more upset with that than myself. But I think because I spent so much time beating myself up as a Christian, that by the time I learned that I didn't have to do that anymore, like, oh, I don't have to beat myself up. I can just say, like, you know what, I'm a human and I'm learning. That was so relieving to me that I guess that's like a sucky answer to you though, right? It's like I can't relate.
No.
Like I want to say that I relate to not wanting to feel vulnerable. Like I want to ideas that are to people, and I don't want to say something where I look like I don't know what I'm talking about, where I look vulnerable. And so I can relate to that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to me, that's an informative answer, because I think there's a trope that all atheists kind of go through deconversion the same way, and it manifests the same way behaviorally. And that's why there is this trope about this sort of angry atheist phase. And even when I went through the phase, I don't see that I was necessarily angry. It's just in retrospect, I was hyper vigilant in attempting to engage in these dialogues and prove what I knew now, because I felt foolish, but I wasn't angry. I wasn't attempting to, assert that I had a deference and intellect that needed to be recognized. It was more so that I wanted to prove to myself that I could demonstrate these arguments. And it sounds to me as though you're saying that this was, from a psychological perspective, kind of a relief to you, because you had gone through this indoctrination cycle where you'd already had these internal feelings that you should be ashamed of yourself, or that you weren't smart, or that you weren't getting things, or that your dissonance regarding the subject matter was somehow a reflection on your intellect. And it was a source of relief for you instead. So I think that the juxtaposition between our perspectives is actually an important message, because it shows that there is not just one type of deconversion, and that all of them are really important to talk about, because not everybody's going to relate to the deconversion story of somebody else and how they dealt with it. So I appreciate you sharing that, actually, and being honest.
Oh, what's that? The crew is telling me that we actually have our winner of this category on the line here to give an acceptance speech. Crew, take it away.
Hi, Dan and the Truth Wanted family. I'm very excited today. Thank you so much. I very much appreciate it. I just want to say that it's always been an absolute pleasure to be able to come on Truth Wanted as a co-host. But what I've enjoyed the most, and what I've been so lucky to be able to take advantage of as a viewer, is calling in to get insight and bounce ideas off of all of the amazing guests that you've had on. So this one is one that I'm really excited to accept, because I am very selfish, and sometimes I do call in. And it's about time that I was rewarded. Honestly, let's be fair, for my selfishness. Anyway, guys, hope you have a happy holidays. And as always, help elevate the discourse. Bye.
And now it's time for our fifth category of the night. Apologetics is a discipline which seeks to defend the Christian faith at all costs, and it doesn't always do it super successfully. So we're going to talk about some of the worst apologetic calls we've ever had this year. And to do that is my one and only ever real co-host of the show, Puck.
Apologetics is the religious discipline of defending religious doctrines through systematic argumentation and discourse. Some of our callers should have looked up that definition before calling the show. The nominees in the category of worst apologetic caller are Kevin from Anti-Darwin.
Having to do with evolution, a great place to start is obviously Charles Darwin, but I wanted to sort of focus on his 1859 book, Origin of Species.
Hey, I'm going to stop you right there, Kevin. I think actually despite what you might think, I actually think Charles Darwin is not a good place to start because evolution has been happening long before Charles Darwin's time. And we've evolved some of our own ideas about evolution since Charles Darwin's time. So Charles Darwin could have wrote that whole book and everything could have been wrong in it. But the facts that we know about today about evolution, we don't need that book at all to know. Okay, I gotta be honest.
Malcolm from God is an Eel.
For the show, and the note that a call screener has is great. You said that you believe that God is a species that looks like an eel or a snake, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's fascinating. I want to hear why you think that.
Nick from Presuppositionalism.
That the Christian God is the ground of all being. He's the ultimate context and that which is metaphysically primary for all secondary states, which would be like me and you and all other particulars.
I'll tell you right now, Nick, all three of those things mean absolutely nothing to me. And that's not saying anything about you. I'm just saying those terms by themselves, they just, I can't make heads or tails of that.
And the winner is Malcolm from God is an Eel.
Well, that's not. If you want to know what the truth is, I guess.
What's the truth, Malcolm?
How would you find it? You know.
Well, yeah. I mean, if the truth about God, you know, I don't know if I would go to language. I don't think that's the first thing I would go to if I want to know the truth about God. Well, you know, you said you presented this theory that you believe God to be an eel or a snake-like creature because the words used to describe snakes and eels is similar to that of God in some languages, right?
Yes, particularly the older languages, like take Chinese, for example. If you say snake in Chinese, it sounds like you're about to say God in Chinese. You just need to add more syllables to it.
But why does
and the same thing with other languages?
Okay, but how does that make God a snake, though? Like, you know, just because it sounds like it.
I said that it possibly looks like an eel or a snake. I didn't say that it was.
Okay, I'm having trouble following here. Desh, what do you think about this?
With regards to Chinese language, I'm assuming you're talking about either, are we talking about Mandarin or Cantonese?
I don't speak Chinese. All I did was I used Google Translate. I translated for Chinese, Arabic, Latin, Finnish, a whole list of them.
So I assume it's Mandarin. Now, one thing you need to know about that particular language, it is tonality is incredibly important to that language. Mm-hmm. The same written word can have 4 meanings because they have 4 different tones. So you know, you don't really. Again, I can't say I'm necessarily following where you're coming from. I feel as you know, if you listen to linguists like John McWhorter, you know, talks about, you know, origins of language. We know that language is fundamentally man-made, and some languages have developed, as Dan pointed out, very similar wording. But the fact that you found a word that still requires an addition to make it sound like a snake, and then that can be derived as that's then somehow correlated to create the idea of God. Maybe you can give us another example. Is there another language that you found a similar you know, piece of evidence?
Do you speak Arabic?
I don't speak Arabic, but again, another language with tonality is quite important. But again, so in Arabic, you're saying that the actual word for God is similar to snake?
In order to say eel in Arabic, you have to say Allah first.
Right,
like
but you know that. You know that the word Allah, you know, existed to my knowledge, and I could be wrong here, but I believe the word predates Arabic as a coherent language.
Okay. I mean, because it's not just the languages for me, I just know that I could demonstrably prove that. And then, but I tied it into my interpretations. It could be subjective. It's a lens that nobody has looked through before, but, the Tower of Babel could have screwed up the rest of the languages for all I know.
Oh, is that a belief that you hold, that the Tower of Babel was a real landmark?
I believe it's at least metaphorical. I think that in order to know that for sure, you'd have to hear the story first, like Kabbalah, and you have to be told the story in order to know that the serpent in the Garden of Eden was using some form of biosuit, neural link kind of technology.
That's interesting. That's an interesting idea, and I know that the Tower of Babel is a story a lot of people refer to make sense of why we have different languages. But people who've studied this stuff, the linguists that Desh is referring to, they've done a lot of work in actually tracing a lot of the origins of the languages that we speak today. We can really conclusively demonstrate that not only is language a man-made construct, but also that it arrived independently at different places at different times. So it doesn't seem to be that they all came from one place and then split off. We can actually kind of separate languages into different geographic regions of origin and not necessarily one specific place, which would kind of go against the idea that all languages were the same at one time and then just kind of randomly split. Like, alrighty, folks, it's time for category number 6. This is the Danfluencer Award. I'm calling this the Danfluencer Award because these are my personal picks for the most up-and-coming influencers in the atheist community of this year. And presenting these 3 people are our lovely moderator, Stitix.
The Danfluence Award is dedicated to the new wave of atheist YouTubers who got some of their earliest on-air time being callers to Truth Wanted, and then went on to start creating their own original content or be a part of the shows of the ACA. The nominees for the Danfluence Award are Notes from Autumn.
No, go ahead.
I keep cutting. There's a little delay, so I keep cutting you off. I was going to say maybe I can create a plant-based safe space.
A plant-based safe space? Did you come up with that?
Yeah, I did.
That is, I like
just made
that.
up.
I have never heard that before. That is awesome. A plant-based safe space. You need to copyright that. This is already going live. Somebody's going to steal it. Oh, man. Well,
on there. If you put something on there, you're gonna get a response from me. I love being on there. I'm sure you've heard other hosts say stuff like, I get a flood of emails. There's no possible way I could respond to it all. I don't have that problem yet. I'm a little jealous. So if you email this show and send anything attention puck, I will know that, wait a sec, I actually have some meaningful things I can respond to. I look forward to the day when I am so flooded, I have to decide what to ignore. Please flood my inbox.
All right. Well, you heard it from Puck. Like, he wants his inbox flooded. Please sign him up for every single pornography site. You can just add that to his mailing list, or add him to those mailing lists, rather. That would be good. I think that's what he asked verbatim.
Unholy shade.
It's so easy to fall into that cycle of just finding what you agree with. And sometimes, I mean, I definitely fall into this sometimes too. You got to kind of catch yourself, but finding what you agree with and disregarding what doesn't fall into that, and being able to look out for that and catch yourself doing that isn't necessarily a skill that's been taught to everyone, isn't necessarily a skill that everyone has.
And the winner is Puck.
Obviously, it's going to be a longer answer for me because I'm the vegan there, but Puck, I do want to hear your thoughts on it too.
Well, one of the most interesting things that I've come across in the past few months to learn how to be a proper host for Truth Wanted, I actually listened to every episode from the past year. And it's been fascinating following your journey, not necessarily having to wait week to week, but just getting to hear like the next day you had a conversation with somebody about where your next step is in the vegan journey. This is fascinating to listen to, and I encourage our listeners to do that, because you're in a very different place than you were just in February. So it's a lot of fun for me to see how you made that progression. As far as me, I grew up in a place where if you wanted chicken for dinner, you go to the backyard and pick one out. So animal husbandry and preparing animals to eat while they're still living, this has just been always a part of my existence. And in Alaska, there are a number of native tribes that still require subsistence, meat sources, caribou or whale even, and they're given special permission from the government to hunt even endangered animals, because this is just how their tribe sustains itself. You point out something very interesting, Dan, when you say that a lot of people actually have more options now. And that it's not, and veganism is not necessarily something that everybody can access.
Correct.
Right? So
Yes.
there are going to be some people who live on food islands, or food deserts, I should say, who just
Correct.
don't have the kind of access that they would need to have a healthy diet.
A side note too, sidebar, that's here in Austin as well. I'm not saying just because you live in a city, even like they have like, there's like over a dozen different, well, actually more than a dozen. I think it's like twice that here in Austin of food deserts, and that's just surrounding the cities. And they define that by how close you are to a grocery store and stuff. There's metrics for that. But yeah, like definitely something to keep in mind, but continue.
Yeah. So for me, any ethical or moral question has so many entanglements that go along with it that to narrow it down to one choice to me seems overly simplistic. Now, Dan says he feels comfortable saying that overall he's reducing the suffering to humans, and I agree with him. Or sorry, to animals, and I can agree with him.
To humans, though, I can make that argument too, but that's for another day.
Yeah, and this is something that I personally probably have not put enough thought into, just because I've always just grown up in a place where, like I said, if you want chicken, you go out to the backyard, you find one, behead it yourself, and prepare it. I've done this with fish. So this is just how I've always naturally lived my life. Do I have this option? My honest answer is I've never actually consulted my doctor about asking whether or not my metabolism can sustain a vegan diet, which is another consideration too. Some people, for whatever reason, it's not the healthiest thing for them to do to go full vegan. This tells me I need to think about it more. But until then, I am sorry to say that I am going to be enjoying my bacon.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said. I mean, like one day I'd like to do a fuller kind of topic, because like this is a response that happens too, where it's like, oh, I haven't looked into this enough, and it's like, and that's a reasonable response. It's a fair response. I had to say the same thing. I think I said that on Truth Wanted at some point. So it's like, well, maybe I should do an episode where we actually do kind of go into it even deeper than what's been talked about. Now, it's just like, I think if you can do it, you should. Like, so that's what it is for me at the end of the day. I see no reason not to. The only reason why I would get McDonald's tomorrow is because I want to, right? Like, I don't have to. There is no particular reason that drives me to do that, other than the pleasure that I would get from that meal. I can get my food from any other kind of source and no animals would have to be directly harmed or cooked up in that process by doing it. And so, like, for me, yeah, I couldn't go back, even if because I don't want to, but like, it doesn't make sense for me on that moral level. It really just doesn't. And that's why I want to stick with it for as long as I reasonably can. And I think I probably could for the rest of my life. Who knows? We'll see. If I need, I don't know what nutrient I would specifically need from an animal that I couldn't get through a supplement, or couldn't be synthesized. But I mean, that is what it is. So anyway,
I think the reason this gets controversial is because it's always going to come down to one of two, and the people who ask this are usually, it seems like they try to narrow you down to one of two possibilities. Either you're inconsistent in your application of morals, or you're a moral monster. right? I don't have a good answer right now as to why some people would have a problem going down to a lake here in Ohio and fishing up some trout for dinner. That is morally bad, but they would also have no problem spraying down a wasp nest in their attic.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. And
it's like, where's that consistent application?
Here's the thing. It's about what's practical, right? Like what's most reasonable, what's best for you can do. You can be the best. Let's say you're the most moral person ever. You do everything right. You're Mr. Rogers Puck. But then it found out that you did something like, oh, maybe you hit your children or you hit your spouse. Okay, you don't have to do that. That's something you can change. There's no reason that you couldn't do that and still do all the other things. And it's just one of those things where it's like everybody has options, and we have more of a choice in this matter than what people think. I think if I could stress anything, it's that. It's like I thought I couldn't do a vegan diet. I'm this giant dude. I thought I needed meat. I thought that was what I absolutely had to do. But it turns out I didn't. And I just didn't look into it enough. And there were so many things about the actual industry itself I didn't realize, in the process of how we get our foods and what people actually nutritionally need, that I just wasn't aware of because of carnism, because of this system that justifies us eating animals that's been going on for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So I have a lot of thoughts about this actually, but I maybe we'll do a dedicated episode in next year. I'm thinking about doing something like that. We'll see, because there's a lot to deep dive into this, and I have more to say about this now than I ever have. So, oh, I'm getting word from the crew again. We have the winner of our category here wants to give an acceptance speech real quick. So here's our winner.
That I am humbled. I don't even know what to say. This is possibly the greatest achievement in my adult life ever since I started speedrunning video games. What does a victory speech even look like? I don't know. I would like to thank the many family members and friends and associates who have turned me into an atheist in the first place. Thank you to everybody who's allowed me to be on their channels and the many platforms, Discord, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, that I've been on that allow me to express my opinion. Thank you very much to the ACA for all that they do and all the volunteers that they have going on behind the scenes doing stuff, mostly so I don't have to. And thank you, of course, to Dan, the Danfluencer himself, for putting on such a wonderful show and allowing me to tag along and ride on the success of his coattails. I look forward to much more great work with Dan and Truth Wanted and the ACA in the future. You guys are wonderful. Thank you.
All right, folks, up next we have category number 7. Now, Truth Wanted hears a lot of religious claims, some of them more obscure than others. So we thought we'd make a category for the most obscure religious claims of the year. And hosting this particular category is our Discord mod and nonprofits host, Malty.
Many of us were formerly religious, and admittedly, we had some fairly crazy beliefs. But then, once in a while, someone calls into Truth Wanted with a topic that most people would think is absolutely strange and or unique. The nominees in the category of most obscure religious beliefs are Discord's own Oriax with Chaos Magic.
I'm trying to think. I've been busy, so I haven't been doing magic.
Listen,
it's kind of
Oriax,
on my list.
I'm gonna be honest with you. If I could do fucking magic, I'd dedicate that 40 hours a week. That's my full-time thing now. If I can do magic.
Pierre from France with Raelianism.
Doesn't speak of a god or gods, but it was speaking of extraterrestrials.
Okay, so those are two very different claims, and I'm wondering how you know both of those things.
And Robin with Ghost Cat.
Robin, what did you call us to talk about today?
You know, I thought it would be fun to talk about an experience that I had with what I can only describe, or at least what I have now described as a ghost cat experience.
A ghost cat?
Yes, a ghost
Like
cat. So this
a
is
literal cat who's a ghost?
Yes, yes.
Okay, cool.
I want to hear.
And the winner is Robin with Ghost Cat.
I want to hear more about this. Keep going.
All right. So, ghost cat experience. I had bought this little runt of the litter cat that I named Maya. She and I had a special connection. She slept between my legs or under my armpit every night and waited for me by the door, and we had a great relationship. She was just the sweetest cat ever. I was living in the desert of California, and for whatever reasons, I had to do a road trip where I picked up a car in North Carolina and I drove it all the way back to where I was living in California. Of course, I did not bring my cat with. So while I was gone, I traveled from North Carolina to Chicago, and then I went through Missouri, and I spent the night with a girlfriend of mine. So I'm in the bedroom, and the door is closed, and there are no animals or anything in the room, just me. And I'm laying on a waterbed. You all know what waterbeds are like. So the first night that I'm there at about 10:30, I'm laying completely still on the waterbed, and all of a sudden the waterbed moved. Like it felt like a cat-sized creature jumped on the bottom of the bed, and it made the water move from my feet going up to my head. I was like, that's really weird. And so I wake up in the morning and I tell my friend, I'm like, do you have any like ghost cats hanging around the house? Because it felt like something jumped on the bed last night. And she's like, oh, I've had a lot of, cats. It could be, you never know. And the next night comes, and it's about 11:15, and I'm laying in the bed. And again, at the bottom of the bed, it feels like a cat-weighted sized creature jumped on the bottom of the bed. It made the waterbed move all the way up to my face. And I just, felt kind of like a cat. So I was just like, hi, kitten, because I'm a weirdo. So next couple days go by. I'm driving my way from Missouri to California, and I get a call from the person that I'm staying with. And he says, I really am sorry to tell you this. I wanted to wait until you got back, but 3 nights ago, Maya ran away, and she hasn't come back. And so the reason I'm convinced that this is a ghost cat is because I had no idea that she was dead. And on the night that she disappeared was the first night that I had the experience. And I also had like a spiritual sense, or maybe it was just by the feeling of the water moving, that it seemed like a cat. And that is my ghost cat story.
Okay,
Well,
so
I am
what's your take
sorry.
on this, Ethan? Let's start with you. Go ahead.
Well, for one, I am terribly sorry about the cat. You know me, and I love kitties, and I would be absolutely devastated if I lost my baby.
I was. I drove from the Grand Canyon back that night, and I called out for her, but I knew she was dead because she already came and said goodbye to me. That's kind of how I, rationalized that experience. It was sad.
So this makes me sad, and it makes me not want to ask questions because I.
Okay, I'll lead with the first one.
Honestly, like 12 years ago.
Okay. Well, let's start with and this is something that's because I am a cat owner. I've been a cat owner ever since I was like 15 years old. And one thing that I had to learn to do with cats is not to anthropomorphize their behavior, because I don't think that they do things for the reasons we think they do things. I've heard, and I can find a source on this, and we'll talk about this in other places too, that when a cat likes to sleep on you, it's more out of a sense of they want to be able to detect when you're moving because they feel like they have to protect you. Right. So if they accidentally fall asleep, then at least if you move, it's going to wake them up and they can go right back into protector mode. Right. Like the reason they give you gifts, like, they leave dead animals on your bed. It's not out of kindness. It's more out of a sense of this is how adult cats teach their kittens how to hunt. They give them dead prey or close to dead prey to practice hunting. So your cat's not giving you gifts and being affectionate. They're telling you you're a lousy provider and you need to really work on your hunting skills. So when I think about animals, the first thing that I think of is, their behavior. They do have patterns of behavior. I don't necessarily know that it's a good thing to anthropomorphize it and say and assume that they have the same priorities that we do. I think that cats I've read a lot of places where cats think of humans as basically gigantic, hairless, really stupid kittens, and we need to be cared for. That's why they follow us down to the basement, because they know that we can't see in the dark very well. So they go down there and lead the way so that we are not in danger.
Wait, you think they're that nice?
I think it's in their best interest to keep us alive, at the very worst, because we're a big body to dispose of. But yeah, okay. And then the other thing that I have to wonder about is how many of these experiences happen at night, right? And one idea that comes up is the idea that it's just you're in that phase where you're about to fall asleep, and it's possibly some kind of dream state that you're in. Like we've all had that kind of dream where you're walking and suddenly you fall and you lurch awake, right? And it makes me wonder why so many of these occasions happen when it's late at night and the only one who's there is you or maybe your partner, but they're already asleep. Instead of happening in broad daylight when there's a lot of people around. It's like, hey, did anybody just feel a cat walk by? So why do you think, Robin, these incidents happen at the time that they do?
I truly think that they happen more at night for most people because you're not as distracted by things at night. During the day, there's so many things going on that if an experience like that did happen, you probably wouldn't notice it as much than an experience where you're, laying still and it's quiet and nothing's happening. Then you're more able to be aware of your surroundings.
Okay, folks, it's time to get to one of the big ones tonight. It's category number 8. And this category is for favorite guest of the year. Now, this show has a lot of guests on it, like a lot of guests, pretty much every single time. And somebody that helps me get these guests is my one and only co-producer of Truth Wanted, Greg James. Greg, come on down.
No. I said, look, I don't care what he says. Matt Dillahunty can kiss my... I'll get back to you. Sorry about that. Hello there. As the executive producer of the ACA and the co-producer of Truth Wanted, it is my job to ensure that we have the top quality guests that you have all come to expect from the ACA. And I may say that we've done a hell of a job this year finding those guests. The nominees in the category of favorite guest are
Christian news outlets,
Hemant Mehta,
or at least commentary or blogging outlets that I see. So I try really hard to say, look, if you are a Christian, let's assume you are, and you're reading what I have to say, and you're reading it because you're hate reading it because you want to be angry about whatever I'm writing.
Right.
Fine. But here's where I'm getting this stuff from. Here's who I'm quoting. You don't believe that I'm quoting them accurately? Here's the transcript and here's the video for you. Mm-hmm. And so you said, do I get flack for any of this? I actually don't think I do.
John Delancey.
I really agree with you. I don't know why there's a need for that. Not only must I believe, but I must believe what you believe, and or you must believe what I believe. It's really unfortunate. The best way I see to counteract it is to just call it out for what it is, and to show the hypocrisy and the need for power and how it's abused in many instances.
Religion.
Seth Andrews.
What should I sort of take a new look at, And before I knew it, I realized that I'd gone from a Fox News Christian to somebody who sort of stood on the other side on so many issues. Now I'm a proud liberal,
Right.
And more importantly, I'm a humanist. And I think quite often I find that being a liberal is a reflection of the fact that I'm more interested in trying to help other people. I'm less tribal, less insular.
And the winner is Seth Andrews.
Anyway, Great call. Thanks for calling in on that, Terry. Let's go ahead and jump on to another call here. We're going to talk to Pat calling from Alabama. He's been waiting for a bit now. Pat, what's going on?
Hey, guys. I may sound like a man, but I am a woman.
Would you stop? You sound fine. Thanks for calling.
Well, I just wanted to call and Seth, I ordered your book yesterday on Audible.
Thank you.
My family is 24/7 Fox News, so I really want to find out the back part of it.
My parents are the same way. We took them some food a few weeks ago, and we sort of handed it through the door, and we disinfected everything. But it's just a given. When the door opens, Fox News is like another resident in their home. It is always on almost 24/7.
It's so funny. Oh, I'm so sorry. Keep going.
I'm just saying, that is their primary conduit for information. It is the lens by which they see the world. And they are missing out on so very much, because you and I know that there's a much bigger world out there, and there are much better arbiters of truth out there than Fox News.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to comment, I just realized, there's always a stereotype of the atheist with like the Fox News kind of parent, but there's also the stereotype of like the pastor with the atheist child. So like, I don't know, maybe it goes both ways there. There's some sort of, there's some sort of conduit.
What's your end zone with the book? You're wanting to sort of understand their thinking, or are you going to is it a Christmas gift for your parents? Because I guarantee you they're not going to read one word of whatever you give them.
No. It is for my ears only. I got it on Audible.
Okay, that's right. Audiobook.
But my mother is 89, and she thinks I'm some kind of magic person, because when I go see her, she wants to see pictures of all of the guests or all of the hosts on Fox News and their families, and I will get back at her and show her CNN instead. And she just really, that sort of upsets her. But anyway, are you guys still there?
We're still here and listening.
Hello?
Still here.
Okay. All right. What I was wanting to ask about, or I guess talk about, I've been in really since 1995 questioning my faith. I started out Baptist, went into the faith movement, moved into the Pentecostal, spoke in tongues, sang in tongues, really thought that I had something exclusive that really none of the other Christians that weren't as spiritual as I was had, since I could manifest something. And I really had to stop and rethink everything. I know that I realize looking back now that it was something that I did manifest myself so that I could be like everyone else in church and not be embarrassed that I couldn't do what they were doing. And I now, what I have realized when I meet people, or see people that I went to church with, and of course they ask you, where you're going to church, and if you're still, how you are with the Lord, blah, blah, blah. I feel like I've gone through a really bad divorce, and I still have to see the idiot every day. I have to drive by the old church. I have to see the friends. And I've realized when I try to tell people that I no longer believe like I believed, that they really hear me saying, I don't think you are doing anything that's real. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Totally. I think in some ways, though, I was just going to say, in some ways that might make sense because, they might see it as a rejection since you were also a believer at one time and now you don't, that it almost, the implication is there like, oh, I don't see things the way you do anymore because I think you're wrong. Like, even if you don't say that, I can see how people can come to that conclusion and maybe kind of put off by it, right?
Right. I think it's a reaction that I guess I should have expected that instead of me saying I've been freed from something, I'm telling them that they're bound up in something and that I believe they're full of shit. And I don't. I don't.
Well, Pat, you know,
I don't really.
You got an uphill climb, Pat. You're in Alabama. I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
There's not a lot you're going to be able to do about that. There is a desperation by people who I think hold an insecurity about their belief. They have a desperation for nonstop validation, which they are used to. Everybody in their circle, at least verbally, overtly, publicly, they have the veneer of belief. This is a reinforcement mechanism. So all of a sudden you come along, and let's say you're using really unobtrusive language. And I like to use the word I a lot. So if someone says, well, you know, where do you go to church? I'll be like, well, you know, I'm not a religious person. I've sort of gone through a journey in my own life. And I've sort of come out on the other side of the God question. I don't have a God belief. You know, I use the word I because my goal is not to put them on the defensive. And my goal is not to try to have that argument or do even street epistemology. They asked me, I answered. But because I think many people hold a deep-seated insecurity, they need constant validation. Maybe they need someone to help them secretly convince themselves. They need constant reinforcement, and you are not that. So that has to be fixed. Oh, wait a minute. Now you've got to validate. You've got to validate. You've got to validate. And there are a lot of reasons I think people do what they do. Maybe they genuinely harbor a hell belief. Maybe they're just jerks. You know, and so they won't accept anybody who has a different point of view or a differing opinion. But there's only so much you can do. I mean, you can't control the perceptions and the behaviors of other people. My only advice to you, and I know it will never be easy in Alabama, my advice to you is remember that your journey is about you. So when you drive by those people, you know, we see them as best we can, many of them victims of bad ideas. We see people who don't understand, they're not listening to the data, blah, blah, blah. Maybe they have an opinion about you that is not all that flattering. But, you know, they don't get to determine who you are. They don't get to tell you what your identity is. They don't get to determine your hopes and dreams and boundaries and family and philosophies and value system. All that is uniquely you. They can never take it away from you. And so my encouragement would be when those moments of sort of conflict happen to remind yourself, you know what, my journey ain't about them. I'm going to be true to myself. I'm going to be me at the temperature that I choose, at the volume I choose. My life, my journey remains about me. That has helped me in my own life. Okay, Pat?
That is true. That is very true. I'm a hairdresser, so I have to sit with a lot of people for a long period of time.
I bet you hear a lot of bullshit, Pat. I bet you hear
a lot of Jesus. A lot of Jesus in that hair salon.
Especially now, you know, Trump and, you know, and all of a sudden, and I'm 63, and in my life, all of a sudden, I can decide what I believe. I don't have to worry about what they think. And I don't know. I've been flooded with so much as far as just in my own thoughts. Now I can think about this. I can think about evolution. I can think about politics. I can think about abortion. You know, and it's so, when I try to talk to someone, I find myself trying to say so many things at once because there's so much in me that all of a sudden I can let it out. And I just get, I can't even talk hardly. So I just shut up and let them talk.
Well, it's probably like choking. You're listening to a lot of that. You probably feel like you're choking on the toxic smoke of a dumpster fire. I mean, it's all around you, and you're like, I just can't take it. I understand that frustration. Unfortunately, there's not much I can do for you there. But be reminded that, and this is the audience of this show, of my show, of communities online, even there are atheist groups. I spoke at an atheist group in Alabama. It was interesting. A lot of people showed up. They were totally on the down low. Like if my spouse knew I was here, if my parents knew I was here, if my employer knew I was here, I could lose my job. I could lose. I get it. I understand what you're going through. But there are more of us every day. And I think if we can get over the hump of the next few years, we're going to see the increase of non-religiosity in this country. bear some real fruit and hopefully make that easier for all of us, including those of us who live in the South. Okay.
Oh, very, very, very true. Thank
Hey,
y'all
Pat.
so much. That's all I
Hey,
wanted
Pat,
to ask.
before I lose you real fast.
Uh-huh.
So you're a hairdresser. I'm starting to get like a more gray than brown, like it's turning into an ash gray. So I want to know, what can you do for me? Like, what do you recommend?
You can pray.
Oh, damn.
All you can do.
Damn. Oh, Pat, you're bringing
brutal.
You're bringing it.
It's just pushing on men. On women, it's horrible. So just be glad you're a man and
Thanks, Pat, for the laugh. That's
Thank
awesome.
you, Pat. Thank you for that. That was great. God damn. Oh, she brought the heat.
She is.
That was
yeah,
good.
That's a surgery.
Okay, folks, we are down to our last category of the night. This one's for all the marbles. It's the Favorite Show of the Year award. This is a pretty self-explanatory award. It's what you guys pick as the favorite show of the year. And hosting for this particular category is someone who's guest hosted on every single current ACA production and is a coordinator for the nonprofits. It's Johnny P. Angel.
We're down to the very last award of the evening, Favorite Show. As you can well imagine, this is the most challenging category to award since every episode of Truth Wanted is itself perfection embodied. But the atheist inner circle, in their infinite wisdom and in their smoke-filled room, deliberated into the wee hours of the morning and brought you these three nominees in the category of Favorite Show. They are as follows. Christy Powell.
And talk to us about that. Go ahead. Now is the time. But every single week I have a special guest on my show. And this week is a local. That's right. It's Christy Powell. What's up, Christy?
Hey, not too much. Thanks so much for having me on. About time we did this.
I think so. So I was on your show a couple of weeks ago, which is Secular Sexuality, another show produced by the atheist community of Austin. And I thought, I should return the favor. And so now you are here on Truth Wanted.
Yeah, we're 2 minutes in and you already have failed to come anywhere close to the number of Matrix puns and references that I was able to slip into my show. So I'm feeling like the hospitality is lacking a little bit, but it's fine. I'll just encourage everybody to go check out that show or, Thursday nights at 7.
Gut Sick Gibbon.
And also because, we're not in the traditional studio. But joining me tonight, all the way from somewhere, is Gutsick Gibbon, also known as Erica, who is a great YouTube content creator who likes to talk about my favorite scientific subject, anthropology, as well as zoology and a bunch of other cool stuff. So Erica, welcome to Truth Wanted.
Hey, thank you for having me on. Yeah, you pretty much summed it up. That's me. I'm currently a master student in primatology, so I dig the ant stuff and I dig all of the amazing extant apes and monkeys that go along with it. So, we're better to express that than YouTube.
Jesus Christ.
Welcome everybody if you're watching live. As you know, every week I have a special guest, and this week's guest is a very special one indeed. A lot of people have said I need to talk to him again because it's been a long time. You've probably read his book. It's a worldwide bestseller. Not autobiography. It is a biography. A couple biographies in there, actually. You may have said his name if you ever stubbed your toe. It's Jesus H. Christ, folks. Live with me tonight. Jesus, welcome to the show.
Praise be.
Praise be. So Jesus, you have quite a following these days, I'd say. Your fandom is pretty big. I used to be a part of your fandom, actually, but it was, it's been a while. What's going on these days, Jesus?
I'm not quite as popular as the Beatles. John Lennon was correct. The Beatles, I think, are vastly more popular than I am, at least these days. But I'm doing my thing. I'm doing my Jesus duties on YouTube, and lately I've been really trying to save the heathens on TikTok.
I see.
There's been a battle raging on TikTok.
Yeah.
And the winner is, and thank you, by the way, Gut Sick Gibbon.
Here and see what we can do. For now, I'm going to go ahead and go to our next caller here. AZ from Texas wants to talk to us about experiences with religion in Texas. That's what I'm talking about. AZ, what's going on?
Hey, am I on?
You are live on Truth Wanted, bud. What's up?
Cool. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm having a good time here with Erica, and I get to talk to awesome callers like yourself, so couldn't be happier.
We're having a ball.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. In my area of Texas, I live in San Antonio, and I know you. I saw you on the Street Epistemology channel.
Yep.
A while back.
I've been around San Antonio.
I know. Right. So I know you know a little bit about San Antonio. My area of San Antonio, at least, like it's pretty liberal, I would say. Right. San Antonio is relatively liberal, but Texas as a whole, we know, is pretty conservative when it comes to religious aspects. A lot of Christians. I just want to know, like at least on my side, right? Like when the topic of religion came up, at least in high school and stuff, right? It seemed like if a lot of kids, at the very least, like if you ever asked, you would say like, I'm religious, but I don't really believe in whatever, and you can kind of see like the hints of atheism. Because that's kind of how I found myself a lot as well in high school. I'm going to assume that a lot of those kids probably turn atheist once maybe they got up to college, or maybe they will become atheists in a couple of years maybe. I just want to know, like, do you think maybe the Texas, kind of like the stereotype that a lot of Texas is super, super conservative is starting to go away? I mean, I know like a lot of Californians are starting to come here. Do you think it's a little bit overblown at times?
Oh, so I'll tell you this. So, I actually grew up in Waco. Okay. So Waco, as far as Waco is like a
Baylor
city. It's like a big city with a small town mindset, I guess. Definitely probably one of the most religious towns I've been to overall. I mean, yeah, we got Baylor University, and just like you can't throw a stone in Waco without hitting at least 3 churches. Like a buddy of mine has a good phrase about Waco. It says there's more Christians than people in Waco. And that always cracks me up because it's just true. Like everybody's a Christian there, but like going to San Antonio, I went to college there for a little bit. That's where I was at in that video. And it is definitely more of a liberal city. Now I live in Austin now, which is definitely the most liberal city in Texas. Houston is probably the next up there, and then maybe San Antonio. But is Texas as a whole changing? I want to say yes, but I've been living here for a little bit now. So, my bias in that is going to play a part. I'm not living in Waco anymore. I'm not seeing it, but Waco is definitely getting way more Californians for somehow. I don't know how they did it, but somehow Baylor University convinced all these California kids that Waco was a good place to spend the 4 years of their early 20s. And I don't know how they did that, because it's not a good decision. You guys had it good over there. Like anywhere else, I don't know. Maybe
I think it's cheaper here. Maybe
I don't know what that marketing campaign looked like. I don't know what recruitment tactics they use, but damn, that is a con. That's a con right there. I'm sorry. If you came from California to go to Baylor, I just don't know. I don't understand. But anyway, so yeah, maybe the more people coming from other states is probably influencing that a bit. But I also think as a country overall, we are getting more secular as a whole. Maybe not as fast as you or I would like, but I think even in Texas, we're starting to see that too. But that is with the caveat, though, that being more secular does not mean being atheist. And I always have to remind people of this because people think, oh, you know, there's more and more atheists now. We're taking over. And no, because what happens is just because you aren't into one religious belief doesn't mean you're into some other woo. And I see more woo or people talking about woo now more than ever. Maybe that's because I'm just more aware of the world. But like I have lots of friends here who aren't atheists, but just believe in just different things. And it's just like that's not, you know, if our goal is to disavow people of bad beliefs or beliefs that aren't true, then we still have a lot of work to do. You know, just being secular isn't necessarily enough. So that's my take on
kind of a I was going to ask kind of a follow-up partially to that. Do you think like people are becoming more secular, but like people are also at the same time, like it's becoming more polarized in general, where people will become secular, or maybe like the kind of the religious belief is becoming a little bit more secular, but still like kind of hanging on in a sense, or like transforming almost. Like it's like, oh, maybe, you know, God isn't like this, but it's actually like this. So we perceive, maybe it is more secular, but the same amount of people still believe in God, or people are becoming more radicalized or something.
Yeah, I can only tell you what the people who have spent a lot of time surveying and studying this have said. And looking at Pew Research statistics from the past couple of years, we're seeing a decline in a lot of the kind of traditional faiths. You know, there's Methodists and Baptists, as far as I understand, aren't gaining as many, but evangelicals are not dropping as fast as other ones. And, you know, there's different ideas of why this might be. It could be because if you're a Baptist or a Methodist, chances are you're probably going to be more open-minded towards other ideas than if you're a hardcore evangelical. And that's not a statement of, you know, discrimination against evangelicals. That's just the culture. The culture doesn't want you to know about the worldly ideas. They literally say that you are separate from the world and they want to keep you that way. And because, you know, it's supposed to be the best path forward. Obviously, you know, we would disagree with that. But if you grow up with that mindset and you're not going to be as doxastically open to other worldviews and other cultures, then yeah, I guess you're not going to be as likely to change. Whereas if you grew up a little more loose in your Christianity, then yeah, you may be a bit more syncretic. You may be able to take in, I know at least one Christian who believes in reincarnation. I don't know how that works, but that's a belief that they have. So, you know, that's probably going to be more common as the years go by. But what do you think about this, Erica?
Oh man, I mean, I come from southern Indiana, so it's not quite Texas, but it's the Texas of the North. So,
you know what? I've been to Indiana, and I'd agree. I'd agree with that.
Yeah, and I went to a very, very evangelical Christian middle school, but I went to a very public high school, and the mood there was very similar kind of to what our caller here is describing. I mean, it was a lot of people who were kind of just getting into that stage where, you know, you're in your late teens, early 20s, and you've got a much more open mind than the very young or the very old. So I think that having resources, which is kind of we're in that area now with the internet and things like that, for people who are in that stage to kind of access and nurture those questions is going to be very key. I mean, I think that's why we're seeing such a surge in you know, the secular members of the United States.
All right. Well, I mean, that's most of my question. I really appreciate you guys answering my question. I think you guys do great work, and I hope you guys continue on.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you, AZ. Really appreciate it. You have a good rest of your night. All righty, folks. That about wraps it up for another episode of Truth Wanted and wraps it up for our special Golden Pico Awards. We're going to clean up around here, but I want to give a special thanks to all the presenters that presented the categories this year. You guys are awesome. And another special thanks to you guys, the viewers, especially to you guys who voted in. This was so much fun to pick these out and do this show and get all fancy and dressed up for this. Obviously, I mean, this has just been an awesome year in terms of Truth Wanted. I mean, we've had so many awesome guests, awesome callers. It was so hard to pick some of these, but I'm really glad that we did this. And this was really fun. I hope we can do it again next year. So thank you guys. This will be the last episode of Truth Wanted for 2020. I hope to see you guys again in 2021. Remember to always keep wanting the truth, and I'll see you next time.